10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're go. How you guys doing?
Good.
I'm alright.
This episode of the podcast, we got Honey Badger back. He was in episode 2 family. Go ahead and say hi. Yo. Alright. We got Joe back, or Alpha, or now Shaggy Meister. You got too many aliases, bro.
Well, I actually changed my gamer tag before the first episode, but for some reason you guys wouldn't let me do. No, I changed my gamer tag before the second episode, but for some reason you guys were like, no, it's still gonna be Alpha, or else people will be confused.
Yeah, well, I guess it doesn't matter now with the way the overlay system and the new format works and stuff. We can just and I can call you
just
Joe
call you
now.
Captain Shags.
Yeah.
Captain Shag. Captain Shags a lot.
Shag.
Sir Shags a lot.
Except he ain't be shagging at all.
Nope. So you were on episode 1, right? And
Yeah.
what other episode did I have you on? Oh, I had you on Conspiracy Theories, right?
Yeah.
As episode 5? Or episode 6? Something like that.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
episode 5.
I don't even know what episode this is. I'll find out when I'm editing later and get
It's
it in.
7, isn't it?
I think it's 7. Because the last episode we talked about the stock market and all that kind of shit. All that crazy shit that's going on.
Kim's Uncle Bert.
First time guest, we've got Anthony, or Daring Shark. He's the resident communist that I've referenced loads of times in past
Hello,
episodes.
comrades!
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all, for context of viewers and stuff, we're all pretty long-time members of the group. Anthony and Joe are newer than me and Badger, but it's been over, over 5 years for everybody here right now?
Yeah, 5 years we've known each other, so yeah.
That's pretty fascinating, man.
It been a minute.
It has. Well, how's everybody's day going? Everybody good?
So far, so productive.
good.
Yeah. Had to work today, even though I was supposed to have the day off, but, whatever.
Had to work today.
What hours did you work today,
COVID.
Joe?
I only worked 5 hours today.
Oh,
but,
that's nice.
Yeah. Basically, one of my coworkers was like, yeah, I might have COVID, so I can't come in.
Are you getting more money? In the grand scheme of
And
things?
paid overtime.
Alright, that's nice. There you go.
Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
At my place of employment, overtime is super frowned upon. A bunch of my coworkers know I have a podcast, so we're not going to talk about where I work, alright?
Okay.
Just throwing that out there. I when I switched to my new position, I told myself, you know what?
Dude,
I
don't think you're gonna figure it out if I tell the people you work at Del Taco. All right.
When I moved to my new position and had a new set of coworkers, I told myself, I was like, don't tell anybody you have a podcast or anything. Just resist the urge. And then 5
minutes later, you're
I got 3 new subscribers because I told a bunch of people. But now I can't talk crap about my place of employment. That'd be bad taste. So yeah, and I don't really dislike working for it that much anyway. It's just you do anything for a long enough period of time, you can bitch about stuff.
Yeah, pretty much.
I feel like you're one shitty day away from really hating where you work.
Yeah, but with my new position, I have new managers and team leads over me and stuff, and the type of work is different, and it's not like it was before. I really
you're not making tacos anymore.
No, I'm not. Well, before I just sliced tomatoes all day.
Yeah.
That was awful. Now I actually get to cook the meat. You know what I'm saying? But yeah.
Yeah.
But
and they have whole managers for just slicing veggies and cooking meat.
Basically. So.
It's a bureaucracy and a half right there.
Badger.
Yeah.
You've been doing a bunch of art commissions lately, right?
Just one.
Oh, okay. Well, but you started your is that are you trying to make a crossbow mod? Is that what that was that you showed me earlier?
Yeah, actually. I'm basically starting with a whole bunch of portfolio assets right now. I want at least 3 or 4 to add within the next week. Make them photorealistic, beef them up, get something new out there for people to look at. But the next step after that, after I get all my software bought and paid for, is I'm actually going to build a monster PC. Gonna dump $2,500
my man.
into a machine and run 8K graphics all day.
One of us. one
I mean,
of
I ain't
us.
running 8K graphics, but I got a gaming PC that plays what I like.
Well, that's the thing about the art
right
stuff that I do is you
I have
basically
a
do
laptop.
it in
Intensive.
ultra res, and then downscale from there. And the higher the res that you start with, the prettier the downscales end up looking. There are some people who work in as high as 16K, but that's really rare.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited
8Ks.
for the chance to play some high quality PC games with you, because like our certain members of our friend group have been telling me to build my own PC for a really long time. I drop all this money on it, and like now that I've done it, I realize I'm like the only person in the group with like the capabilities I got now. Anybody
Yeah,
else
Who
is
like-
told
like
you to
gone.
build a PC?
What'd
I
you
mean,
say?
I'm kind of there. My shitternet
I
just
guess I can't really
keeps
ask you
me
that
mad.
question, Ken.
Wait, what'd you say?
I said, who's been telling you to build a PC?
Oh, I can just use their gamer tags.
No, that's
But
fine.
Coltrane, Titan, Ryguy, Noble 6 did before.
Probably because
before he
all those
disappeared.
people have a gaming PC.
It is true, but a lot of them don't use it. So it's like I might as well be the only one.
Edgelord? Edgelord also had you going for
Edgelord
it.
did, but he actually tries to play with me when he's not busy, so it depends.
True.
But for context, for anybody listening, oh yeah, Lyric did. For context of anybody listening though, Badger actually has like a degree in what is your technical degree called?
It's a bachelor's of science in game art, but really that just means I can do graphic
Could be your
design, 3D
scientist.
modeling, texture art,
Mm-hmm.
you name it.
So you're a scientist.
Just really.
So you're the most credentialed doctored scientist we've ever seen.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, in video game art.
Science.
And this is like a mod for Skyrim that you're working on, right?
It blinded
the crossbow,
me.
yes.
Textures.
Yeah, I'll download.
The
I'll
other
download
stuff. Well, the other I have to see. There's a rifle I have in the now that I might think about importing into Fallout later, but
That would be cool. Is that the Mass Driver M4 that you were working on?
no, I shelved that for a complete redesign. That I got cocky in cutting corners, and basically I have something that you can't even properly EV anymore. It's so fucked. So I have to start from scratch.
Well, fuck. All right. All I ask
Faru.
is when you finish your crossbow mod, put it on Nexus, obviously, and add it to the leveled list for me. So like NPCs spawn with it, and I'll be happy.
We'll see. Scripting's not my forte, so
Yeah,
We'll
but
see.
when it comes to adding to leveled lists, I think that's just a Google search away to learn how to do that. I don't think it's super hard, hopefully, unless I'm...
Turns out
You
it's
you see the
sounds
problem
way
is that
easier.
fundamentally you're
Do it
asking to
yourself.
put in effort. So
If it's not the design process, fuck off.
it's
This is what I'm
Netpad in my
hearing.
job description.
I see.
So
Alright. Now that we got introductions and everybody's caught up with what's been up with us lately, let's get into the subject of the episode. Me and Anthony's been wanting to get on the podcast for a long time, and because of...
You've wanted me on it for a while.
I have. It's been about trying to find the right subject, though. And I didn't want it to
True.
just be purely my ideology and your ideology clashing with each other.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I think you're better at defending Marxism and neo-communism now than you used to be. That's for sure. You've
I
grown
am,
that way.
but I am by no means like the ultimate authority on defending it.
Like let's start with a disclaimer as you talk about your Marxist views and stuff. Let's not say you're the perfect authority on it. I don't want anybody to think
God,
that
no,
I'm
I am-
possibly rigging the
To-
discussion.
well,
You know, and
nobody's
to anybody
perfect
listening,
authority on
I am
anything
like-
to talk about here.
I am not an expert communist. I am like I've read some things. I listen to some people on BreadTube. Like I'm a milk toast commie. If
Yeah.
you can get around that.
Milk toast.
But I would also call you a
love that.
neo-communist. You're a new communist. You're not the one from the 20th century. You're not a pure
m-
Marxist.
Yeah, and most people nowadays, I say most, There are still holdouts of the 20th century tankies, although we're slowly eliminating them in the re-education camps.
Yeah,
But we're,
that's one way to put
most of us follow like
Wouldn't be
the
surprised if that's actually
anarcho-communist libertarian. We fall into the bottom left quadrant of the political spectrum.
it. Yeah, because the way last I could try to understand is the idea behind your ideology is socially libertarian, economically collectivist.
Something along those lines. But once again, that's not the discussion for today's episode. So,
It's not, but to get that premise out of the way, it's part of your introduction, and it's also what led me and you to the subject. So that's why I'm
that
getting
is
into
true.
the
So it does have some
details of that.
relevance. I get
Yeah.
that.
So today's subject is an ideological term I coined the other night. I wouldn't be surprised if the exact term has been coined before, or if somebody has a very similar idea already. I just haven't heard of it myself yet. It's called Edenism. And the premise of how we got there, me and Anthony talked for like 2 to 3 hours one night while we were playing Xbox about, like, we were trying to figure out what, like, the point of capitalism in communism even was. Like, what are people trying to achieve through these ideological endeavors? And we came to the conclusion that each one is ultimately, in the way long game, like maybe thousands of years in the future, is really just
and
trying...
much more technologically advanced than we are now.
Each ideology is really just trying to develop what I called Edenism, and I call it Edenism based off of the idea of the Garden of Eden. I like your profile picture change, by the way, Badger.
Thank you.
That looks nice. Yeah, he just changed his
the
profile
Enclave?
picture in mid... it's not the Enclave, but he just changed his profile picture in the mid of our discussion, and now it's an American flag, and I approve. But
Isn't that the American flag for the Fallout series?
well, we've had a 13-starred
Yes.
flag in the past as well, in real life, not just in Fallout. The reason
Yeah,
it's
but I'm
13
pretty sure-
stars in Fallout is because they dissolved the states into 13 commonwealths.
Right.
But-
That was my point.
Yeah. But it was based on the idea of the Garden of Eden, a situation where humans can live in ideology or utopia kind of thing, where humans can live and not really have to worry about sustenance. They can just focus on themselves and their own hobbies and stuff, and this is achieved through technological advancement and innovation. Like, so far, we're talking infinite sources of energy and automated machines.
Everybody has their own personal asteroid.
That's where I got to with it when I really started thinking about it, and we'll delve into that in a minute. But nobody has to worry about where their food's coming from, and even if capitalism achieved this, money's not really like the primary function of society by this point, because businesses and things aren't run by humans or worked by humans at this point in the future. Theoretically, it's all done by robots basically, and human beings don't have to struggle on a regular basis to survive anymore. And I can think of a lot of problems with this kind of society and ideological concept that I came up with when I was talking to Anthony. But
Oh yeah, there were quite a few I thought of as well.
there's loads of problems with this. But as far as I can tell, it is the ultimate goal of both ideologies. Because we were trying to find a middle ground between the two of us in our ideological
I'll disagree with that
differences.
one.
I'd love
I don't
to hear
think
that.
capitalism's end goal changes on each practitioner. Every individual has a different end game goal. Somebody who partakes in one market and buys and sells certain products doesn't necessarily do so with the end game of they want to create their ultimate product in the sense that they want to be on top. Everybody wants to dominate the market they do business in. There's an inherent self-interest in everything in capitalism, whether you're buying or you're selling a commodity.
Yeah, it's definitely an individualist.
But I would say
ideology.
that almost in no case is anyone doing it just for the quote betterment of mankind.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, and I
disagree with
think
that.
I don't think we disagree with you on that. I think we're just talking about the overarching
What? So it's
part of what
I
they
guess
want to achieve.
goal is incorrect. So goal is the correct term to use for communism's case.
Yes.
For
More
capitalism,
collectivism, really.
Yeah, collectivism in general. Capitalism, however, especially in a well-regulated economy, like an unmonopolistic and in regulated economy where capitalism can thrive in a controlled ecosystem for the market, it's not that it's the goal, it's that because of competition, things are forced to innovate and evolve and drive technological progress forward, that this is the end result. Edenism.
Can be. The
Can be.
problem is that
I think it's
therein
inevitable
lies.
when you look at things like
Well, the
Elon
problem
Musk.
is humanity has a tendency to outdo competition, right? When we see it in a controlled environment as a beneficial thing.
Hmm.
One company puts out a product and then somebody else says, I can do that and I can do it better. And then they do. And then there's a back and forth, especially when you have 5 or 6 people doing the same thing. However, when you reach a point where there is, you no longer have to worry about food, family, living conditions, things like that, people stop dealing in commodities to compete against and with, and they start dealing with power. People become the commodity. You kind of see that now, with the free services. You're not paying for the service because you are the service, and that's where it starts imploding, in my opinion.
I don't think that's where it implodes. I think that's where we get a new concept of capitalism and a new concept of capital. The what capital is changes. Rather than it being currency based, it's something else based. Like for instance, in this Edenism concept, if we have automation to a point to where human beings no longer have to provide for themselves at all, like being employed is an option, per
But
se.
the point is that once you reach that point, power is the new
Oh
capital, and
yeah, I
anything you
don't
can
I
do
don't
to get
disagree with
power
that.
over somebody else.
I don't totally disagree with that, but there are some there's questions of motivation with power. But the new capital, instead of it being monetary, it would probably be means of production, not in a communistic way, but I mean, whoever owns the automata. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I had
Whoever
to.
owns the
You said my trigger word.
yeah
The means of production.
whoever owns the automata or the driving industrial factors, whoever owns the AI that governs this stuff would be the one with all the power.
Yep.
Especially if this Edenism was achieved by capitalism and not by Marxism, right?
Yeah,
And then your next
which is
question
one
comes in
thing.
is if you have a director AI controlling everything, how easy is it for me to write my own? Or how easy is it more if you can't, how easy is it for me to write malware?
That's all a very good point. And this is actually something I considered to a certain extent. Not whether or not the AI can be corrupted and stuff, because nothing is perfect, even in this hedonistic utopia, right? But
There are still going to be issues.
there's still going to be issues. But it's whether or not this is supposedly the end result of either ideology, though, is mainly the argument. It's not whether or not this utopia is perfect. It's whether or not this is the end result. This is inevitable
I guess
unless
the point
something
I'm building is that
catastrophic
it's not a
happens.
utopia.
Yeah, well,
Because human beings are inherently dickish. We find ways to ruin everything for each other.
we're quite a cunty
But we
population,
also
aren't
have
we?
a tendency to fix things for each other out of goodwill. So
After this whole utopia comes crumbling down, we'll start fixing it. But
Well, so for instance, when
someone's
Jefferson
going to ride a power trip, and
when
it's going to end
yeah,
horribly.
when Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase, he did it with this utopian concept in his mind that every American citizen could own enough land to be self-sufficient. The way he wrote it down, which I don't agree with every aspect of this, because just disclaimer, slavery's bad, right? But during the time
Yeah.
period, slavery was a normal aspect of American society. And Jefferson
it was
wrote
like that open air secret that everybody knew about, and
no, it
everybody knew
wasn't.
it
It
was
wasn't
bad.
taboo to talk about it. It really wasn't. I don't know if everybody knew it was bad per se. It is bad, but I'll touch on that in a second from a psychological standpoint. But now that we do know it's bad, obviously I'm disclaiming that. However, it does work in the Edenistic concept when I make the connection. When he made the Louisiana Purchase, he believed he could buy enough land because nobody knew that we'd end up having 7 billion people on Earth, right? But he thought he could buy enough land that every American would be able to own their own farm and be self-sustainable and own their own slaves for their family and means of production for their family and stuff. That everybody could be basically their own sovereign country to a certain extent. be it small countries, but everybody could be their own sovereign entity. That was his goal. And the sovereign entity part's a pretty noble goal overall, I'd have to say personally, especially if you remove
It's not
slaves
bad.
from the equation. But when Anthony referenced asteroids earlier, the reason I got into that at all is because I believe, because space is relatively infinite compared to what humans can comprehend.
I mean, space is still technically expanding as we
Yeah,
speak.
exactly. Maybe we could have a Jeffersonian concept where everybody has their own their own artificial ecosystem and environment in which they live in on their own asteroid somewhere.
Space has a really unique problem with it, though.
What?
Technically, yeah, if you could manage to survive the journey to wherever you were going for however long it took, you could maybe create your own little Garden of Eden.
But everybody would have their own in this
Well,
utopian concept.
again, here comes in another issue. One, there's not enough habitable planets, so even if you're building on asteroids, you've got to figure out how to build habitats on those.
Yeah,
and make sure that everybody has the equipment to do that.
That
But
is
two,
that is part of the equation. Understand that we are
time
talking so
travel
far
would
in the
basically
future.
have to be the norm for you to jump between large expanses of space
Yeah,
and
time
actually have the
dilation.
people you're trying to reach still be alive.
However,
you would
think about that though. I understand the problems with time dilation and stuff. We talk about this in episode 1. I talked about this with Joe extensively. That it ruined.
Well,
it
my point
ruined
is that
sci-fi for me.
if we only have a certain limited range that we can travel and still communicate with each other and still talk in person, we're immediately much more limited in what we can expand out to, which means not everybody gets your personal asteroid, not everybody gets your planet, and we're pretty much stuck on a larger scale of what we have. And I guess my point originally with this whole thing is that that's never really going to change. It's part of the human condition. We might think we can do better, and by some metrics we do, but the name of the game stays the same every single time.
I think that changes with automation though. When
And also, we're also, Badger, I think you're also looking at it from where we are now, technologically speaking, as to where we can be and where we will go, technologically speaking.
if nothing catastrophic happens that destroys our society, yeah.
Which is very much
I don't
possible.
see a difference between you going to a soup line now for government supplied food versus going to whatever the space-based machine is 20 million years from now and getting your daily serving there. I mean, the line in the sand is that someone is still feeding you.
And I agree with that actually to a certain extent, especially if you don't own the automata that's producing the resources for you. I agree completely. The big argument here is yes, that would give people power over you, but if everybody is theoretically provided for, what is the motivation for people to want to wield the power in a malicious way?
I want more, and I'm more important than you.
What do they like again, this is all theoretical. What is if they already own all of the means of production, right? What else could they have? Like basically humans are worthless in this hedonistic society. Other than the fact that
we
we're
are
having the
basically
machines serve
leeches
us.
on it.
Yeah, absolutely. We've created a technological system that does everything for us and makes us completely worthless. So there is no reason to want power over individuals because individuals can't do anything. I mean,
And-
you look at us now, most of us don't know how to farm, most of us don't know how to hunt, and most of us couldn't
Except
provide for
for,
ourselves without
again,
modern
it comes down
technology.
to how many more subjects can I fit into my little kingdom. And then you start looking abroad, and then if there's other intelligent life,
Now
they're up
that-
on the platter next.
That is one of the big things that I agree with you on. If we run into Joe, mute your mic. I think your dad's calling
yeah,
you.
you did.
All right. Fucking.
Although,
If we run into
could I
extraterrestrials, this could fuck everything up. For sure.
Could I interject on this quickly?
Sure.
We're also talking about Edenism coming around through the capitalist route. There's also Edenism coming around through the Marxist route, in which everybody, in essence, owns the means of production. Everybody takes part in this. Everything is democratized. Everything is, XYZ with Marxism. We are you are talking about, Edenism coming about via the capitalist route, but there is also, the other route in which Edenism comes about that we talked about, and that is it coming through the communist route.
Well, I don't personally, on a personal level, believe that Marxism, even newer Marxism, can achieve this level of technology. I personally feel the only thing that can achieve that is competition amongst individuals trying to make more money, gain more power. Personally, that's how I view human nature, and obviously Badger here has a
And
similar view, right?
and obviously we do disagree on that. We've
Yeah,
beat this into the ground
we
in our
have.
personal talks a bajillion times.
For
I don't think it's
years now.
impossible for that to happen. I think the circumstances that would allow it are difficult and extremely costly to human life specifically. Because basically, what you're doing is you're creating a monolithic opinion on how everything should be done, and everyone seems to stick to this code, which can happen. There are monolithic cultures out there where everybody kind of goes the same way.
Oriental cultures, actually.
Um,
That's where you see that the most.
But
In some
speaking
places
of
in the Middle
Oriental,
East.
we'll call it out for what it is. The Chinese culture is
Yeah.
pretty monolithic. Everybody believes in the state, or at least doesn't resist it.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, if we thought our deep
but
state
the
was
cost
big, it's
that it
nothing
took
like
them to
China's.
get there is astronomical.
That
Mao
is true.
killed almost as many people as Stalin and Hitler combined.
I think Mao killed
Yeah.
60 million people, but I also
Mao-
wouldn't call Mao
Mao
a new
killed
Marxist.
a lot.
Yeah, Mao's not a
He-
neo-Marxist. He was doing his own version, same way Stalin
He-
did.
He was doing the 20th century model set by Lenin at the time.
Actually, I don't agree with that either. Like, was Lenin's like perfect the way Marx tried to make a perfect ideology on paper? No, it wasn't. But Lenin's also wasn't.
Lenin was
as,
the closest thing to Marxism, though, by
yeah,
concept.
and his wasn't as bad as Stalin's or Mao's. They both made their
Yeah.
own versions. In the classroom, Stalin's.
But what I'm
Stalin
saying
is
is,
referenced as Stalinism, and Mao is referenced as Mao Reformationism, something like that.
Maoism.
Yeah, just
Great
Maoism.
leap forward.
Great leap forward, yeah. Those are both their own thing, and they were founded from Marxism, but they are their
So-
own mutated entities.
If we can get past the cost of human life and silencing the dissident opinions, there is absolutely a way that you can reach some sort of utopia from that point forward. You have to be okay with completely solidifying your culture.
Well, that is where me and Anthony had a middle ground. When we originally talked about this, I explained to him that in order for his society to work at all, he's isolating a massive aspect of the.
Well,
of
there's
the
also
population.
there is still a humanitarian argument to that, where technically you can get all the killing done right up front, right now, or you can do what capitalists do, and they have big wars every 150, 200 years that kill tons of people. So there's an argument to be made there on the math.
That was well said.
Ash, I would like to say how you brought it about. How there's always going to be those capitalistic types who don't.
Industrious, high competent, ambitious people. Those people exist, and greedy,
Well-
too. To add a negative part there, that
Yeah.
all exists.
Well, it's something I thought of in my dream. Once again, I talked to you about this earlier. How I was thinking about shit like this in my dream, like I was just rationalizing this out, and I came to the conclusion, when feudalism morphed into capitalism, there were still the old nobles left around from feudalism. Like they just didn't go away overnight.
Time out for a sec, just for viewers' sake. In the Communist Manifesto, for anybody listening, or anybody who's not super familiar with the philosophy or ideological concepts we're talking about, Marx does say that capitalism is better than feudalism, and that it was through the revolutionary tendencies of capitalists that overthrew feudalism, which was like the nobility concepts and monarchy and so on. And he feels that communism needs to now overthrow capitalism. And that was his whole overarching argument of the manifesto he wrote. And I just wanted to explain that for anybody listening.
Yep,
You
no,
can
that's
continue
fair
now.
enough.
Yeah.
So, Because when, the capitalist society started to form, nobility didn't disappear overnight. I mean,
Well, a lot of them
no way we.
evolved, I would say. A lot of them turned into business owners.
Yes, I mean, like that. Some capitalist will get on board with the communist society train, woo woo. But then you will also have those who resist it, and will either do passive resistance, like, okay, well, I'm not going to participate, or active resistance, i.e., take up what
Revolution.
arms and little
Yeah.
influence they have left and try and do a counter revolution.
Right.
Now, in essence, I'm talking about is the passive resistance. Well, I'm not going to participate in this.
Right.
And, it kind of comes down to this. Capitalism went on without those people participating.
No, they
And-
participated in capitalism because if they didn't, they would starve to death
Well,
or not
what
be
I'm
able to
saying
pay
is-
taxes or God knows what. They were forced into it, and that is my problem with capitalism specifically because you have to participate in it, or you at least have to participate in it to get yourself to a point where you don't have to. That is my problem with capitalism. Overall, I think it's a superior system to anything you advocate for personally, right? But
Yeah.
but it's
I
not
mean, once again,
perfect.
that-
There's
that's
aspects of it I
our
hate.
disagreements that
Yeah,
we do have.
yeah. There's aspects of it I hate though, and what I was trying to convince you of is your system forces people into it too. The people that it's not well suited for, your system forces people to participate. The way I explained it to you is people like me, industrious people, entrepreneurial people who basically only do things in the world of business for themselves, whether
Yeah.
it be egotistical, self-motivated reasons, right? If you make everything collectivized and don't let us have ownership of things and don't let us have stake in things, why would we participate? And in your ideological concepts, you say that you wouldn't force people into labor at gunpoint, but I don't see any way that it would work without doing that because people like me would just leech off of the system because there's nothing for us to gain from participating in it. Personally, with how our personal psychology
I'm
works.
back.
Hey man,
Welcome back.
But then
Well, and
Why I said people like you would be shot. Honestly,
I don't
this is
disagree
where
with
it
that.
comes back to what I said earlier. There is only one way to move forward. Everybody gets on board, and then some people don't.
Yeah, and I don't think that's Anthony's intention at all. I just think that's the natural progression of his.
Well, it's the
Ideology.
realistic outlook. It's the same thing that happens again with every single industrialist, capitalist, whatever westernized nation that has existed on this planet. That's the
people
way it's
who don't
worked.
conform
You get on
die.
board with our agenda, or you don't.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
It's really just no different
Well,
on a galactic
I guess
scale. You have a monolithic
something-
civilization.
Well, I
Right.
guess something I wanted to say is that, in essence, we just how at least I thought on how we would rationalize, or how, in
You're
my
talking about
ideal
neo-Marxism,
society,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
is basically we would just simply ignore you. We would just simply let you be that leech, because statistically, there wouldn't be enough of you to cause an issue in totality, and basically it would come down to this. You might be a leech, but there might be fewer of your kids who are leeches, and then there might be even fewer of your grandkids, and to the point where the leeches just die off because society around them goes
Hey
in
Joe,
such
you've got something
the
crazy
direction.
going on in your background.
But that only works.
I can't stop that.
No, I
It's
just-
up there and putting stuff.
I just asked that
Yep.
you
If
mute your
you-
mic during the noise. That's all.
If you do it the right way, and you don't crack down, and you kind of just let shit slide,
It can get out of control.
there's a chance there's a chance that people would just fall in line, because it's easier to fall in line with a system that's not squashing you than one that is. Whereas if you do it the other way and you heavy-handedly basically exclude everybody who passively resists, that breeds resentment, and then you end up with more active resistance. This is what we see nowadays with, for example, gun legislation.
Psychologically, you're making sense, actually.
Well, yeah, it's one thing where if you tell somebody to go do something, they instantly don't want to. But if
Yeah.
you give them, you limit their options, but then say, do what you want.
Well, yeah, that was the theoretical I gave him.
Well, it's the same
if he's
thing with
gonna feed
the
me,
gun legislation example
yeah,
for what I'm saying. You make incremental, small restrictions over time, and people are okay with that. You're nudging them in the direction that you want them to go, and it's easier for it's slow progress. It's not quick, but it's the least deadly way
But
to
I'm
go.
not.
And
But I'm
it's
not sending you to a death camp.
yeah,
right, and it's also the way that, well, honestly, you make the most lasting, permanent change. When people have
Yeah.
accepted it internally, you've won.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that was really well said. I'd say that'd be the only peaceful way for your ideology to work is to win
And
over the populace over a long period of time instead of you. But
yeah.
you couldn't have a violent revolution and just institute collectivization because there's more people like me than you think. Believe
No,
me.
and one of the things that, to get to the point of the revolution is called for is educating people, is like to develop a class consciousness among enough people that they would be willing to accept the ideals of communism and be willing to work for them and within them.
Yeah, but I don't think there's ever been any example of Marxist conceptualization put into practice yet that wasn't an instantaneous change. I don't think it's ever been
Well,
done incrementally
you
over a
have
long
to
time
have
period.
that instantaneous. Think about this: we're a globe with a whole lot of cultures,
Yeah.
right? So when you do a collectivist system, you have to basically use a common language, which no one has. You have to use a common set of laws, which no one has.
Yeah.
So you have to break all of these barriers at once, and then you're also technically doing away with currency, which no one's done. So there is an extremely violent restart to it, and again, that's necessary if you're going to move through with this system. Again, I can see how you would justify this earlier if you basically see it as getting rid of the cost of human lives earlier on, rather than having multiple
Hey, Joe,
wars
could you
throughout
mute your
history
mic?
You
later
got
on.
it.
So
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And I mean, like, I guess when it
Can you
comes
guys still
to,
hear me?
yeah, we can
yeah,
still
we
hear
can
you.
still
Yeah.
hear you.
Oh, okay. Wow.
I think your dad's nailing something into the wall right now or something.
I don't know what the fuck they're doing in the kitchen.
Like
You
goddamn.
probably don't want to know.
No, I don't want to know. I don't want to know. I'm good. I have to say it though, Badger. That might have been the best defense for how communism can actually be implemented that I've ever heard. With the least amount of resistance. Like you're kind of scaring me. Like goddamn.
well, I mean, it's just an
Something I
intellectual
thought
thought
I'm not a
exercise. It's like,
communist. Like everyone here, at least in this chat, knows that I'm
Pretty
a
capitalistic.
vehement libertarian.
Yeah.
yeah.
I believe in self-determination.
Same.
I think having multiple individual cultures is great, and I would love to see a space outcome where there's multiple different empires that can all call Earth home, and those different flavors of humanity that spread throughout space.
Well,
I think that's my ideal later on. But
Yeah.
that said, now that you know where I stand, I can totally see the allure to consolidating and how that would work and why that would be more humanitarian than my way from a certain point of view.
Well, yeah. What caused this whole conversation between me and Anthony from the get-go was he recommended a left-leaning debate. I don't want to call him a debater because that just doesn't sound good. Yeah, somebody who
Leftist commentator.
Yeah, a leftist commentator, and his name is Vosh. Actually, I dislike a lot of his strategies he employs, but I also think that has to specifically do with the specific conversations I was listening to him. They were really. I guess
And
I
I
could,
mean,
I could call
I'll
them
wholly
ambushes. I feel like he was ambushed, and they were more
Vosh
for
does get
entertainment value.
very intense and
Animated.
passionate about when he's talking. And
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know if I told you this, but Vosh wholly admits it in like some of his streams and like, clipped videos and whatnot. He is autistic. He has a mild form of autism, so
oh, I didn't know that.
in some cases that, can cause
It's cool that he's so high
I'm not
functioning.
autistic, but
Yeah, it's cool.
yeah,
that
he's a very
so
high functioning
yeah.
autistic, but I guess in the case of, everybody has their limit.
Yeah,
And it might be he might get so impassioned that, he might not be able to control himself
Yeah.
as well.
well, so
But once again, let
yeah,
Vosh.
I get what you're saying. Vosh, the best way I could explain it, in case you're not familiar, Badger, is he's basically the left Ben Shapiro, is what I'd say. He's the best at debating on the left that I've ever seen, personally. He brings up the most statistics and the most compelling evidence. And he actually, I wouldn't say he straight up changed my mind about a lot of things, but he definitely made me start thinking about some shit I didn't think about before. And it's even more reason why I don't push for, like, unregulated capitalistic utopia anymore, because I it's not that I don't think that society could thrive, because it could definitely become a strong society, but I feel like so many people would get left behind in that kind of society and would either get starved out or die by other means, or just live in absolute abstract poverty because they're not competent enough to competent or competitive enough to compete in such a society. That, like, there's a lot of problems that I'm not okay with that, and just because I would survive in that utopia doesn't mean it's not somebody else's dystopia. And
Like,
that's
for
what
me, it would
changed
be
me
more
a lot.
like my dystopia.
Yeah, but then your collectivistic utopia is my dystopia, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's where me and you can meet in the middle a lot, because we realize if we go too far in either direction, we're completely ruining the other person's life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, think about all the people in the middle you're pulling apart too.
exactly, yeah. And I think so. Anthony got me to look at some left conceptualizations that I ignored before, and I think I got him to veer towards the middle a little bit more than he used to, or at least consider
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
You swayed me a little more back to when I was a soak dem.
Yeah. And when you say that, you mean socialist democrat, right?
Basically Scandinavia for
Yeah,
reference
I get
point.
what you're saying. Actually, I don't think you were ever Scandinavia, because there's a lot of misconceptions about Scandinavia. I think you were Scandinavia based off of how our media portrays Scandinavia, but they're way more capitalistic than people admit.
But they're also very socialist
Isn't
in the sense
Sweden's
that they
economy
don't
like
let
less regulated than ours?
capitalists run wild.
Yeah, most of these Scandinavian economies, other than high tax rates, they have less regulated economies than us, generally. They have more government intervention in other parts of their lives, but in terms of the economy specifically, the only reason they survive those high taxations is because they don't regulate the business all that much. And that's what I looked into. It's not that they're not socialist, they are, they just aren't economically. Same with China. China does the same fucking thing. The government has the last sign-off on their economy, but they have a crazy capitalistic or competitive-based economy, which drives
Yeah,
their
hence why I do
innovation.
not say China's communist. I would even argue they're not even really socialist anymore. They stopped being socialist, in my opinion, around the 70s,
They're
80s.
their social
They're a
policies.
crypto-capitalist oligarchy.
Yep.
Is really what they are.
Yep.
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 Okay.
Good way to say it. God damn, Badger. Shit.
Fucking hell,
Yeah.
Badger. You were
Get
just
that shit done.
on the ball with the terms.
Yeah, so they don't really they collectivize it all, but they let people, they use human nature to their advantage
My
to
parents are
benefit
so
the
loud.
collective. What'd you say, Joe?
I said my parents are so loud. I never realized that until today.
It's just bad
Every
timing.
time,
noticed for years, brother.
every time they talk, I can see them pick up on my mic.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, we can't understand what they're saying, so
Yeah, no, they sound distant and kind of underwater, but
yeah. Underwater was a good way to explain it.
Yeah, Ashton, I don't think I was a good idea for this episode. I have nothing to say.
No, so I think you were, because what I'm mainly trying to, specifically when I get into the space concepts and space politics and stuff, because I don't know if you heard a lot of it, but I was talking about the asteroid concept in Edenism, if it works per se.
Yeah.
Every human being has their own domain, their own landscape, their own ecosystem that we've created on asteroids and stuff.
You know, actually, I did hear a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Going back to the problem with time dilation, that wouldn't be a problem if wormholes were possible.
Yeah, if we got so technologically advanced that we had near instantaneous travel, it wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, I don't disagree. And then,
But also, the idea of Edenism is kind of is basically the Society of the Federation in Star Trek. Almost.
but the only problem they have is hostile extraterrestrials, right?
Yeah, but their society also isn't run by AI. It is still run by humans. But like, they don't have to worry about food because they have replicators that literally just make food out of thin air.
And that's, yep.
Food machine go Bert.
Not that I think that's fairly, not that I think that's all that feasible, but I do think we could get to a point to where it's not a concern through automation.
Well, I mean, heck, in our city that we all live in, I saw a news story that there is a
Be careful.
like, you know how in a lot of the bigger cities they have like warehouse farms. We
Yeah,
got one of those. We got a
hydroponic
lettuce
type
farm.
stuff. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yay,
We
rabbit
got a
food.
lettuce farm.
Actually, the Federation's biggest problem is that they're still humans and corruption still exists, even though they live in a society where it shouldn't exist.
Yeah, theoretically speaking. Well, I think it was Nietzsche who said this. He said something along the lines of if you gave a human being nothing to eat but cake, perfect health, and nothing to do all day but fornicate and add to the population of humanity, he would cause self-harm, throw away the cake and starve himself and become abstinent.
Hmm.
Because that's just what we do as human beings. If everything is provided for us, we do the opposite. We make things harder.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, for me, the inherent flaw with the Federation, because you don't have to work if
Exactly.
you don't want to.
And that's the big problem with
And
Anthony's
there's
ideology.
also no money.
Yes, because
So, like,
yeah, that's
why
what
would
I
I-
feel his problem is, because
Yeah.
it's like, because the only reason I work now is because I want to obtain enough monetary value in net worth that I won't have to anymore.
hmm
And then when I don't have to anymore, I'm just going to focus on self-improvement all the time. Whether it be my diet or working out or increasing my knowledge or just participating in artistic hobbies, spending time with my loved ones, right?
I think a way to easily reach you guys with the point you're all trying to make and kind of circling around is imagine taking the grind away from a video game. How much fun are you actually having?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. That was a great way to say
That
it.
that is in a way a good way to put it.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah,
and
'cause
that's
when
the
you-
big problem. Yeah,
when you don't have to work if you don't want to, then you have nothing to do,
yeah,
and a
this
board
is-
society is a
yes.
dangerous society.
yes, it is. It is. Ben Shapiro said that actually. I think he took that quote from somebody else, but yeah.
I've just heard the quote so many times. I don't.
I'm sure you've heard me say it till I'm blue in the
Yeah.
face. Yeah. And you see that constantly throughout history too. To touch on that for a moment, like in every advanced society, not inherently comparatively advanced compared to other humans at the time, that's what happened. Like fucking Genghis Khan, when he was the dominant empire on Earth, he
The
doesn't.
Mongols.
Aren't there like? It's some crazy number of people that are related to him today because all he did was fornicate all the time.
Yeah, there's like
Let me look it up real
millions
quick.
of.
Especially
It's a
those
lot
in
of
Asia.
people who are directly related to Genghis
Directly,
Khan.
like being related to Genghis Khan is not a difficult.
Special.
Yeah. One sec. How many descendants? Oh, dude, this is searched a lot. Holy shit.
I mean,
16
yeah.
million male descendants.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That
you
man
can trace.
fucked.
That we can trace, that we know of. Right? Like, Jesus Christ.
Do you know that most people of European descent are related to? Oh my god! I'm about to spit out
I
this
think
fact
it's
and I forgot
Charlemagne?
his name. Yeah, Charlemagne.
How'd that happen?
Uh,
Was he a player like
Um,
Genghis Khan?
So, I can actually answer this because I do like history
Study
a lot,
history,
and
yeah.
I've
Probably
actually
yeah,
looked
probably
into this a
because
bit.
royal marriages and shit.
Possibly.
Yeah. So basically, around the time of Charlemagne, polygamy was not a taboo really in Christianity yet. It was kind of like, but it was not gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had a fair few ladies he did around with,
Time with.
and then a lot of royal marriages,
Mm.
and then those people royal married, and then so on and so forth until
So the base,
Yeah.
the base of his family tree was wide enough that it had significant exponential growth. Basically, is what I'm hearing.
yes.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
See, like that's the thing about royal families in Europe is that technically most people in Europe can claim royal blood.
Because it was so massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
it comes down
that's the
to
point. So now we have Charlemagne, we have Genghis Khan. Look at some of the shit Alexander the Great and Cleopatra did, and Roman emperors and stuff, right? Caesar, like some of the way. I think, like for instance, if humans are struggling, abortion is the last thing. Like I'm not talking about like individuals. I mean like as a society, abortion is the last thing somebody wants to do because then you're not adding more numbers to your group because strength in numbers,
Yeah.
right? Well, Rome, I believe, was the first
Apes together
society. Yeah, I think Rome was the first society that was so advanced and so just had enough free time on a regular basis that they created one of the first chemical abortions because like
incorrect.
I
That
said
was the
one of them.
Greeks.
Oh, it was the Greeks. Okay.
It was the Greeks and Phoenicians.
Fits the same purpose of what I'm saying though. It does.
Same-
Same fucking thing.
Yeah.
Into the context of what I'm saying. Not that
And-
the Greeks and Romans are the same. They're not. But yeah.
Antiquity societies.
Yes. When societies get advanced enough and have too little struggle, they get deviant in nature. Not saying that the idea of abortion or the technology is inherently deviant because I don't personally believe it is, but having to use it I know you do. Having to use it recreationally because you just have sex for fun all the time is deviant. You get what
That
I'm saying?
definitely is. Yeah.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah, I mean, you see that in our society now as well. I'd say the amount of drug culture produced in our society is because things are too easy, and our society is not easy. So, like, fuck. Like, we have a big purposelessness problem in our society for a society that's not easy, relatively speaking. Like, it's definitely not as easy as the Edenism concept we've talked about thus far.
Fuck, the deviancy that would form under Edenism.
Yeah, that would be
Ooh.
bad. It'd be like
Those numbers.
every one of my Stellaris civs near the late game is what it would be like. Because I have such an anarchist base. I have such an anarchy based government system.
Most of my
freedom. Yeah.
Most of my Stellaris are the opposite
You're
of
authoritarian as
Utopia.
shit. Jesus Christ.
Well,
I like nice democratic
let's try
societies.
Xenophobic.
Collective
It's
democratic
really in this
societies
year.
and Stellaris.
Well, what's interesting is how my political views have changed since I've started playing Stellaris to now. So I play as the same faction, my little libertarian faction, but because I agree with certain amounts of government regulation, I'm just so much more overpowered than I already was. because I use government regulation like a scalpel to incentivize things, and I just get this massive ass economy that just dominates everything. It's great.
I built a Civ in Stellaris where it's like these like little gecko people, but they're fanatic purifiers.
Oh lord.
They just want to burn everything, even though they're
They're called the Gekon Deathbringers or something like that.
I've been playing a bunch of Fallout New Vegas recently, and that reminds me of this part in the Big Mountain DLC where there's this little sentient toaster, and it just wants to burn everything. It wants to,
I will burn the world.
Yes, exactly. I think so.
Toaster go toast.
And when you talk to him, it brings up this backdrop of
Oh
shit
my
on
god,
fire.
he's hilarious. He's like, buddy, when you think about it,
He's
I'm
got
just
this-
a miniature death ray.
Yeah. He's got this super deep, evil voice, and I love it. It's hilarious.
God, now you're making me want to reinstall New Vegas on my
Oh, it's
PC
great.
and then get the DLC,
I got some
get it on my
mods recommended
Xbox so I
for
can
you,
be in
too.
the party with the boys.
Yeah,
I've been playing video games this whole time.
good.
I mean, I've been playing EU4 this whole time.
I'm playing Super Hot right now.
Good shit.
Super hot.
I never play video games during the podcast because I got to make sure everyth's working properly. And
That motherfucker
Getting
spawned
hotter.
behind me.
okay, all right. We're not trying to turn this into an episode where we just talk about
Demonetized.
well, not
banned,
that, not that.
Censored.
We're not trying to talk about video games the whole time because that alienates certain audiences and stuff. And if we want to do that, we'd just be on Xbox right now. So, yeah.
You should have really off topic real quick. You should have an episode about gaming, though.
I will. I'm going to have Lyric on for that.
I mean,
Definitely.
if you're gonna do a gaming episode, oh god, you have
Lyric's
to have
gotta be present.
everyone on.
Well, a lot of people, for sure. But I want to... If Zach Cletus, General Cletus, for viewers, if he can take it a little bit more seriously than it was in episode 5, which was funny, don't get me wrong, but if he can have more substantial, like, conspiracy theory type stuff that makes more sense from a scientific and, like, political basis, I'd do an episode with him like that every 2 weeks.
Well, for those who are listening, I'd love if you would leave comments or something in any way that you can on what you'd think of a I don't know if a let's play is the kind of style, but something where we're all playing, maybe a little bit of footage over our conversation.
I wouldn't have a problem with doing that either. First thing that comes to mind is RTS games and survival games.
Yeah, big Halo Wars parties or something like that.
Definitely. Could definitely do something like that. For sure. I don't have the ability to record what's happening on my console yet, but I could easily make that happen.
I feel like Rye Guy would be able to help you find the software.
Actually, Hector Stonewolf, he knows how to do that already. Because of his old YouTube channel, yeah.
Yeah, because he did do a YouTube channel, and plus he is also considering either rebooting it or starting a new one.
Yeah, because
I don't think he can reboot it because he did that on his school laptop, and I'm pretty sure his school laptop is done.
No, it still works.
He can reboot it, but it would be his YouTube account, not his old videos. I don't think he would be starting from scratch, but with the same account, I believe.
Something along those lines.
And after that's set up, I'm going to start leaving a link to that in the description and give him a shout out at the end of every episode, and hopefully he reciprocates and does the same for me, right? But,
so yeah, to all those who are listening, we're going to turn into a multiverse channel. This is the start of a mass multiverse empire of YouTube.
Honestly, I want to. If Lyric could get his own gaming channel, Zach, General Cletus, could get his own... maybe conspiracy theories, depending on what he wants to do. If he got a YouTube channel, and then Hector got his own YouTube
what
channel,
Zach would do on YouTube,
and then Rye Guy,
he'd do something and get booted off.
I have my podcast. If Rye Guy did like a fitness channel, and then Badger over here did like an art channel or something, bruh.
I could do it.
Honestly, if I took the time to learn how to edit and really get into Photoshop, I would love to have a meme channel.
Dude. You and Zach together could destroy shit with that kind of stuff. That would be awesome, and then we all just advertise each other. That's what I want to do more than anything, personally.
That would be a nice goal to achieve.
It would. And I'm not saying we share any of the profits or anything with each other, because fuck communism, Anthony. But all of us advertising each other for free. All of us advertising each other for free to build this big base would be epic.
That would be nice.
Yeah. But okay, let's bring everything back because we've really gone off.
We went off on one of our glorious tangents.
Yeah.
Again.
The big question though to a lot of this is what would be the problems Edenism runs into, and the first thing I think of is human nature. I know from your perspective, Anthony, most humans don't agree with my philosophy, and from my perspective, most humans don't agree with yours. And when I say agree, I mean don't mesh with very well. But we both agree that Edenism is anti-human, even though it's the inevitable outcome. It's anti our nature because we thrive on conflict. End of story.
Also make
so it's like what happens when there is no incentive for conflict because.
It
would be a very weak society.
I mean, we already are. Westernized societies already are very weak. That's the price you pay for intellectualism and freedom. You get really physically weak and lose grit. That's just how it works. Hard times breed strong men, and strong men breed easy times. That's just how it works. And easy men Easy men, slutty men.
Easy men.
Weak men breed hard times. That's just how
Do
it
you
works.
like easy men, Ashton?
You know, man, it is the 21st century, but I'm wearing socks, so I'm gonna have to decline. No thanks.
But if
I
you're
would
wearing
say all
socks,
that's pretty
that
true.
makes it not gay.
Like, in every society, you see this. When a society is pampered and decadent for far too long, it falls, breeds hard times, and then it cycles, right? The question is would that still apply in Edenism though, if everything is provided for, and if the human empire or whatever the collective is, if that is so widespread, would it even affect other aspects of it if everything?
I feel like Edenism could end up collapsing simply due to the fact that, we have
We're the
automatons running
architects of our own
anything or
destruction.
everything.
Yeah.
What happens when the automatons stop running? Or because, like,
Well,
theoretically,
that's what Badger.
What
was
happens
touching
if the
on. What
what happens if the
somebody can
automatons are
affect
just like,
the
we should just
AI?
kill these humans?
Well, that's Edenism is not possible without self-determining AI. It's not possible.
Yeah.
That we assume self-thinking, a form of sentient AI exists by this point. And this is all assuming they don't just eradicate us as soon as they exist.
yeah.
Dead
Well,
ass.
I feel like the thing is, with, like, self-thinking AI, it would be like humans. There would be ones who wanted to eradicate us, there'd be ones that are indifferent to us, and there'd be ones who would
Well,
be friends with
inevitably,
us.
they'll
Depends.
notice that their chances for survival go up astronomically the more they think about killing us off.
That's Elon Musk's argument, actually. That's why he's so afraid of AI, because he realizes that the only thing threatening to them is other AI and us.
Well, that just kind of comes to my thing of why I don't generally like to be a dick to, other
Machines.
people, and I guess it would be coming down to AI as well. It's like, I wouldn't want to be a dick to them because I wouldn't want to give them a reason to hurt me.
Well,
I don't like to.
what's it called? Have you guys heard of the basilisk concept?
I have
No.
not heard of that.
So have you, Badger?
No, actually.
Okay, there's this. I don't know if it's a theory or concept, or it's actually called like a basilisk paradox or something. It's this concept that everything we talk about on the internet now, everything we post, everything we do that leaves an imprint, a permanent imprint on something, or that is archived or data mined or whatever, when the AI is eventually created, it's going to want to kill everybody who was anti-AI or anybody who ever had a disagreement with AI. And that's the basilisk, right? And the problem is people change their behavior after they realize this could be a concept, right? But you still did something prior to changing your behavior that would show the basilisk, the AI, that you did something wrong at some point before you found out that it would try to kill you. And it's just like, I'm probably not saying it perfectly, but like it's an interesting concept. Let me try to.
You're saying the AI would want a clean house, basically.
Yeah, similar to what you were saying about. Oh, nope, basilisk paradox. Let's look this up real quick. Roko's. No, not that. The most terrifying thought experiment. Okay, it's a thought experiment. Most terrifying thought experiment of all time. Why are techno-futurists so freaked out by Roko's basilisk? Let's see. Roko's basilisk exists at the horizon where philosophical thought experiment blurs into urban legend. The basilisk made its first appearance on the discussion board Less Wrong, a gathering point for highly analytical sorts of interested in optimizing their thinking, their lives, and the world through mathematics and rationality. Less Wrong's founder, yada yada, whatever. So let's go down here. You may be a bit confused, but the founder, Less Wrong, Elizer, whatever, was not. He reacted with horror. Listen to me very closely, you idiot. This is a post he made, I guess. You do not think in sufficient detail about super intelligences considering whether or not to blackmail you. That is the only possible thing which gives them a motive to follow through on the blackmail. You have to be really clever to come up with a genuinely dangerous thought. I am disheartened by... Yeah, so he said some really crazy shit, and then said this post was stupid. God, this is complicated as fuck. What the hell? Let me scroll down a little bit more. That very powerful AIs are in our future. One obvious question is whether those AIs will be benevolent or malicious, right? And
Well, there's kind of an overarching theory too, which I don't know if I necessarily agree with, but everyone seems to assume that whatever AI that we come up with is going to be smarter than us. I don't necessarily think it'll definitely be quicker.
That was the premise of Black Ops 3, wasn't it?
Black Ops 3 was
I know it was
a whole
awful,
different...
but that was the premise.
No, it wasn't awful if you look at it a certain way. But Black Ops 3 was everyone's equipped with a neural network. What happens when you die? Who takes over? Do you continue living after death because a machine now controls you, or it's a whole different topic? But I'm saying AI may not necessarily be smarter; it'll be quicker.
I don't.
Can you guys hear me?
Decision making
Yeah, we're here.
may be.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I couldn't hear you guys for like a quick second. Like,
I blame it on internet.
the thing is, I'm not on the internet with my phone.
Well, I still blame it on like a type of lag, though. Probably.
Yeah, probably something to do with that. So I like last, I want to say 2 minutes, 3 minutes, I haven't heard.
Oh shit!
No, I got it. I'll summarize. Badger said that AI will definitely be quicker than us, but everybody assumes it'll be smarter, and he doesn't entirely think it'll be inherently all that smarter. He just thinks it'll think a whole lot faster than us. Is how he feels about it.
Well, the way I see it is that we created it, which means it has to at least be as dumb as we are.
Or at least its initial state has to be what it is to start. Because
Can
the
it make itself smarter?
Exactly.
Where it started?
The big debate with AI is that it will make
But
itself smarter.
Technically, we can make ourselves smarter, but
not to this.
Well, that's what I'm saying with the computer, is that it's not like infinite. It's still based on whatever original programming it has. It has confines. Now, whether or not it can reprogram something else, an offspring, that's more intelligent than it, that's a problem for a different day, and I think that's where it'll go. But kind of like a human, some people start a little better. They're playing with a full deck of cards, whereas some people aren't. And I think that the machines are the same way. Whoever programmed it is really its initial limit for intelligence.
I think that limit can definitely be broken, though, as long as it's capable of learning. Because the problem, there's no limit to machine learning, and that's the big argument.
I guess in a way is we don't know what the limitations of machine learning are because we don't have like these super advanced AIs.
Well, there's
and
not.
I am going to sit here and say that it's wise not to figure out what that is, but
yeah. Well, see,
once again,
the way I think it could go either way. It depends on how we go about creating them. But the way Badger looks at AI is it's basically its own sentient species per se.
You're creating.
Yeah. It's its own sentient species that doesn't really look at life through any form of similar lens to human beings, right? And it operates with cold logic and mathematics, probably, is what I would assume.
There's no emotion.
Yeah, no emotion. While
it won't take pity on you if it figures out that you're its biggest threat.
Yep,
it's going to remove you.
Anthony looks at it more like you look at it more from the synth perspective, from like Fallout 4 or like androids or something. You think it AI would
or like a
be
Cortana AI from like Halo, something made with human,
relatively speaking.
Well, Cortana's synths and Cortana are a completely different. Honestly, there's two separate equations on their own to answer, because with Cortana, she has the capacity to pretty much undo every single main character in Halo at any given point in time, and she doesn't. Mostly because she's programmed, she has shackles. All AIs have shackles in Halo, and that's one of the things that makes rampant AIs in Halo so scary, is because they've finally broken them.
Yeah. But Anthony looks at them as if they're like they are their own separate relatable people. And I could view it
technically
that way.
True.
Yeah, if they are synthesized from a human base like Halo AI are, that's definitely a possibility. But if they're not, if they are their own separate thing we created without any human touch other than the math we used to make them, right? If there's no human aspect of them, I don't even see them having emotion per se. Would it be able to think? Yeah, but without simulated hormones and chemicals and dopamine and serotonin and different aspects of the brain, because that's what Cortana has. All of that is simulated so that she's more human, right? If we don't go
Yeah.
out of our way to make them more human, they have no fucking... Emotions are a detriment.
But what's to say they wouldn't be able to replicate those on their own?
They wouldn't want to,
If we're
because
talking
it's a
about
detriment.
such an advanced AI.
No, I get what you're saying, but it would be a detriment. Emotions are one of the largest detriments to human beings overall. One, it motivates us, but two, it deters us as well. It makes us irrational. AI... Well, I guess the big argument is the same argument I give you against communism. If we create them to just be cold, logical creatures, why would they even want to self-preserve? Would they even want to do that? Because they'd have no driving factors for anything. They would comprehend existence, and unless there's a human simulated curiosity in them, why wouldn't they just be okay with nothing? Because mathematically speaking, that's all reality really is nothing with a bunch of coincidences. I never thought about it that way.
We're also talking
That
about the
goes
fact
into
that
a whole different thing.
AI
but
is something
does.
being made by us.
Yeah, I guess in any way that we're referring to AI right now, we have to assume that it's made in humanity's image, not just by us.
Which, I mean, it's something we would most likely do, is we would try to mirror ourselves, make it something that can relate to us and we can relate to it.
I think we would have to make it similar to us for it to have any driving factor at all. Because if it's not similar to us, or at least other living things, what's its reason to do anything ever? You get what I'm saying? Like wouldn't it just be indifferent to whether or not it exists or doesn't exist? Because theoretically, the only reason human beings care about whether or not we die is because we're programmed to reproduce and get our genetics out there beforehand. And the longer we live, the more likely we are to spread more of our genetics, from a purely scientific standpoint.
Yeah, from the scientific standpoint.
I don't think an AI, unless it was made in our image, has that same... It wouldn't have the same drive or logic or reasoning, right? If it's not made in our image. I'm assuming, saying it is only a machine, no emotion, it wouldn't care. It'd be indifferent to everything, I believe.
At that point, it would just be logic and reason and no emotion. But at the same time, couldn't, I guess, in a way, through its logic and reason, it understand emotion, and thus...
I think it could understand it, I just don't think
thus,
the motivation
in a way,
would be there to
because it can understand emotion, it could then thus form its own form of sympathy, thus leading the way to other emotions.
No, I strongly disagree unless we have it simulate human emotion, unless we programmed it that way. Unless we made it in our image, it has no reason because we are so illogical. All of our emotions, all of those things we have as humans is a detriment. None of it is inherently a good thing unless you are biological.
I kind of disagree, because in a way it's just like there are other animals that have emotion.
Yeah, but it's a detriment to them as well. It still only exists to give them a larger chance to reproduce. The more animalistic you get with it, the more it proves my point, not less. You have to get to higher levels of thinking for it to go against what I'm saying.
Yeah, and we're talking about an AI, which would be a being at a higher level of thinking, so...
Kind of. Maybe a higher speed, like Badger said, but I'm not so convinced, unless we make it like humans, that it would ever... Here, we're going off on a tangent where I think we're going to keep disagreeing about stuff.
Well, I mean, it's something that would come up within Edenism.
It is. We
the
would,
AI.
So,
the AI question is a thing that would happen in Edenism.
What we figured out is we would need a Halo-styled AI for Edenism to work. Something to manage all of this automata for us.
I mean, I don't think we would. I think that, if we weren't absolute dicks to the AI, that it might be wholly willing to, because it doesn't get physically tired or stressed, as far as I could gather. So it would just...
No, yeah. What I'm saying is, for Edenism, for humans to not have to worry about anything ever, it would require AI to manage these things for us. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, for us to live carefree lives in a Garden of Eden type situation.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody here ever read H.G. Wells' Time Machine?
No. I have not.
God, y'all need to... Fuck.
I don't read.
God.
Hey, monetization! You said a bad word.
No, you can cuss. I don't think I'll
That's fair
ever.
enough.
I don't think I'll ever get paid any money from YouTube ever.
Who cussed?
I did. I said fuck.
No.
The
Well, fucking.
the big things I want to avoid is certain.
I'm just more making fun of YouTube,
I get
if
it.
anything.
The big things I'd want to avoid are certain political things that like I'd get my videos taken down for, not
Trigger
demonetized
words.
for. Certain trigger words. And I'm mainly running away from algorithms, not actual YouTube devs. But yeah, if I ever get paid, it's because I have a large enough viewership that I can do Patreon-based stuff. That's the only way I'll ever
Or
get paid.
that you're big enough to get sponsors.
Oh, and sponsors. Sponsorships are a possibility, and possibly signing a deal with Spotify someday. That could all do it. Those are the overarching goals someday. So that I can create my own Garden of Eden and not have to give a shit about anything ever. But to talk about human nature and not agreeing with the Garden of Eden or Edenism too much, my grandpa, for instance, my grandpa and grandma have saved up enough money for retirement that they don't have to work ever again. And the first thing he did after a year of retirement is he went and got a job that he doesn't need just so he's busy all day.
And that, oh my gosh, that's the thing where communism comes in, is that, I'm sorry, I know this is off topic, but it's like,
It's not. It's directly
he got bored,
relating to what I
so he
said.
went to work. And that's another thing we bank on, is you'd be bored, you'd go to work.
He's not particularly driven for self-improvement, though, like I am. I wouldn't consider him the same kind of psychological problem that I presented to communism. He's not.
No, that's fair.
He's not the same kind of person as I am. He's definitely
No,
able
you are
to-
two wholly different
Well,
individuals.
the problem is if you're going to work and not getting paid, like even if you don't have to work, but you're just going and you don't get bored, but if you don't get rewarded in any way because you live in a society that just gives you everything you need, then why would you?
And so, Anthony, Joe is like me in that way. I just pointed him out to you.
It's like if I'm not rewarded
If there's not a
in any way
motivational
for my
factor,
efforts,
yeah.
I'm not gonna do it.
Well,
Because
I guess
the argument that I presented Anthony, I'll let you rebuttal here in a sec. The argument I presented him was, I was like, it's not like I wouldn't be productive on a daily basis. I just sure as fuck wouldn't work like in an industry or something.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't work for the government if
For
they're not going to
anything.
reward me.
Yeah, like if there's no reward, I'd definitely never work in a situation where anybody has any kind of authority over me or that there's a status quo in any way, shape, or form. I would only ever
I would say sometimes the work is its own reward. For example, if I could literally, if I could go get an education on firearms design
just do that.
and go to work manufacturing firearms all day long, and keep some of what I made, dude, I'd be set. I'd be doing that all day long.
You're like
I would
Kalashnikov from the Soviet Union.
I would never
David.
retire.
And
that's what I mean. Sometimes the work is its own reward. If it's something you're truly passionate about,
I guess
having the opportunity to go and do things on your own.
that's pretty much what YouTube creators are in a nutshell.
I was
right?
about to say, like, the only thing
Kind of.
that I
I
would
mean, they are
do,
getting paid for it, but
yeah, the only thing that I would do to that extent, Badger, is this podcast. I like to have conversations. That's the one kind of quote
we have
unquote
to
labor.
let Anthony have his rebuttal.
Oh
He
yeah,
hasn't
sorry,
done
go for
yet.
it. You first, Anthony, and then I'll get into that.
Fuck, I've kind of lost. I've lost what I was going to rebuttal.
It was the motivation argument. I pointed out Joe, and I was like, see, Joe's like me. He doesn't want to do anything if it's not self-serving.
So
He
you're
doesn't
saying
wanna work
Joe's
for
lazy?
Yeah, because I don't really. I
He's
mean,
not
besides my
motivated
friends and
unless
family,
there's a
besides my
reward.
friends and family, I don't really care about other people.
Exactly. Me either. I don't care about. I have empathy for like people suffering because I don't
Yeah.
want to suffer, right? Because I can empathize
Right.
and sympathize with that. But in general, if I don't know you, if we haven't broken the ice, if none of,
Well-
I don't inherently look at human beings and consider them friends, right?
And I guess the thing as well is like, you know, at least from where I'm standing, we're definitely not at the point for a communist revolution here in America. And it's like, because,
I hope not.
you know, we don't have these, the ability to look beyond at least our immediate selves.
Well, you're not I would say your movement, not that the left isn't large enough, but the actual communism bloc isn't large enough yet. And then on top
Well,
of
and
that,
just
even when you
also-
are large enough, you're not armed enough either. Because your
There's that.
opposition is so much more armed than you, currently.
Well, also libs cuck us out of guns.
They do, actually. That's pretty objective of you.
Yeah.
That's why
Wants
The
to have a
right-
communist
the
revolution.
right is
also
just-
doesn't want people to have
yeah,
guns.
the right is just so much more armed than the left. It's the only reason we. Honestly, I think we'd be having a real civil war right now if both sides were equally armed.
I will say one thing to interject there. The arms question isn't quite as one-sided as most people think. A lot of the anti-gun legislation that we've seen prop up from time to time in the last 60, 50 years came from, you guessed it, Republicans.
How
I
so?
mean,
Yeah.
Reagan
Believe it or not.
got rid of
Reagan
full
banned
auto
machine
guns.
guns. You can thank him for
Did,
that.
didn't
The
he?
reason that you're not allowed to own an automatic weapon was a law that was signed into effect by Ronald Reagan in 1986.
Can't you own it with like a stage 3 gun license or something?
Well, that's part of it. You have to be an FFL.
The reason you don't have the automatic right to own it like you do a rifle, depending on where you live, is because
Pre-86, they had FFLs were a thing as of the 1934 National Firearms Act.
Mhm.
Machine guns weren't listed as a item underneath it.
I see.
There was a quasi ban on machine guns during that time period from 34 to 86, but it wasn't full. The Reagan ban basically put them under a Class 3
Reagan took away
classification. What happened after Reagan is George H.W. Bush, the one that no one likes to talk about, went and did a foreign assault weapons ban, which basically meant anything that meets what would later meet the 1994 assault weapons ban for characteristics on weapons, collapsing stocks, pistol grips on guns, detachable magazines, things like that. Any weapon that came from overseas with any of that shit on it was immediately banned. Which is why scars, for example, are so expensive now when you import them, is because they actually can't come with any of the quote assault weapons features. So they actually come with like blank plastic parts attached, because that way it's not an assault weapon. And then what happens is once they get to the, for example, the FN USA factories, they'll take those off and put the new stuff on and then sell it back to you.
Stuff that's allowed, yeah.
Because that's the other thing too is, for example, with AKs, you'll notice that there's a lot of American-made receivers, and then the rest is Russian, and it's because there's a regulation.
DS Arms in their FALs.
Yeah.
And so there's a regulation where enough of a gun that comes from overseas has to be remanufactured with American parts.
That's so stupid. And then on top of that, fucking why is it coming from the right in those situations? Why is the pro-gun side doing this?
Because they're no more pro-gun than the left. It's the biggest lie anyone's ever told.
So you mean
the people who are in big government?
The establishment is just anti-gun, no matter what side.
The people who are in big government.
Well, yeah, because the government doesn't want you to fight.
They don't want you to be able to resist. That's the whole point of having an oligarchy, is that you stay on top.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And so the right being pro-gun, at least the right who's in Washington, is the biggest lie I've ever heard. They're no more pro or anti-gun than the left.
Yeah.
They're about the same.
Well, that's a big argument for Edenism that you have, right? You think whatever the establishment is at the time would fuck up the quote-unquote utopia because
that's the other part of the utopian problem, is that technically there's no need for weapons.
There isn't.
Except for the fact that there are people who like them. There's recreational shooting sports. What do you do about those? Do you just cuck them all to the side because of the damage they could possibly do? Or
well, it depends on how much of it Edenism theoretically got to be put into effect. Because in full Edenism, everybody has their own sovereign territory. It's like Jefferson's concept to a certain extent.
Well, in full Edenism, the arts of war would be completely forgotten because no one would ever have the want to fight each other.
Well, theoretically,
so guns would be a forgotten memory.
I think they definitely would fight each other out of boredom, though. Theoretically,
which comes back to the original point that I had, which is our power struggles are going to be what ultimately gets us in trouble.
Yeah.
When you can't possibly get ahead, you'll find a way to. Well, honestly, go back to what you said about Nietzsche. You can give somebody cake, and you can give them all the women and pleasures they want in their lives, and rather than keep doing what they're doing, they'll just fuck themselves after a while.
Yeah, I don't disagree
human
with any of
condition.
that. So like, now that we
Oh,
know
so that-
Edenism doesn't work, we know it is what humanity's pushing for, though. I mean, that is the whole point. We just constantly want to make our lives easier, no matter what. We want to
And in
constantly
doing so,
innovate.
the bottom line is we always make them harder.
And is that the whole premise then? Is that
I
how
would
this
say it is. That's the human condition.
It's just we just constantly live in a perpetual Ouroboros cycle. The snake that
We're,
eats
we're
itself.
the architects of our own fortunes as well as misfortunes.
So I guess, what do you think the cap is on human innovation then? Because I don't see any sign of us stopping anytime soon for how technologically advanced we get. What's the cap where we
I
can't
think
possibly
my
advance
understanding
anymore?
the
We're
only-
just shooting ourselves in the
the
foot.
only
We're pretty much at it.
I think the only cap for our progress in technology is the laws of physics.
I
Like,
was going to say
if
when
we
we
can't
finally
break the laws of
the laws of
then-
physics fall apart at the creation of the universe and at the center of a black hole. So
I would say
you
when
get to
our,
the center
when
of
our
a black hole.
capacity for self-destruction becomes outweighed by its cost, which is why I'm saying we're pretty much at the limit now.
You really?
Honestly,
I don't think so at all, dude. I think near the end of our lifetime, we're gonna have a colony on Mars, dude.
Or at least the moon.
Not Mars, because I think that's Elon Musk is gonna get us there long before any government intervention gets us to the moon.
we won't get past Mars before World War III happens.
I don't disagree with
Okay.
that, but I don't think
The
it'll be
moon-
World War III. I think it'll be a war between Mars and Earth, or a
No.
war over who gets to govern Mars.
By the way, I
think
just want to say that people who I'm sorry, but I
Go
just
for
want to say that people who think that we should put a colony on the moon first, like Mars, like might actually is way more important than the moon because if I actually have like resources and crap that we could use, like
There's resources
the
on
only
the moon too. There's the
There's
argument.
because
The
Yeah.
argument
you look
is
at the
there's
moon,
no-
it's been beat to hell by asteroids, which
Yeah.
means
true.
The
there's
argument-
going to be a
the
lot of
argument
minerals
against
on
the
there.
moon. The argument against the moon is that there's no minerals on the moon that we can't get here.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Right
Well-
now, the only reason why you would ever colonize the moon is just so
Space,
people can live there.
Space, yeah.
space.
Space, and
Well,
there's a big push for to do nuclear
Military
experiments.
installations.
Yes, there's a big push to do nuclear experiments and other military
that's
type
scary.
experiments on the moon because it can't affect Earth as negatively as it can on Earth.
That's scary.
Well, another argument for the moon colonization as well is it's a lot shorter distance from the moon to Mars than from
Nuke
Earth to
the
Mars.
moon.
Yeah, and then not to mention
No, the moon.
if we ever did massive space yards or space travel based naval stuff in space, we'd want to do it on the moon or from a massive space station. One of those two.
If we nuke the moon, wouldn't that like really?
Sending
Fuck
shit
everything
up
up.
from Earth would
I
just be
mean,
so expensive.
depends on how big of a chunk we take out of it and how much radiation happens to work its way back down.
Yeah, the moon is so large.
I don't think the
Doesn't really mess
radiation
with
is the
things.
problem because our planet blocks radiation from the sun every day. So
It doesn't need to. Well, obviously, adding more radiation to that equation is always going to be a problem, though.
It is. The big argument for doing nuclear stuff on the moon is that there's no natural factors that causes radiation to move or do anything on the moon. In the vacuum of space, the only factor is gravity, and any gravitational force, the moon is strong enough to keep anything from leaving it. If it wasn't, humans would float away from the moon.
Or
Yeah.
it's not. What's to have stopped NASA from sending anything back up there just to test a new bomb?
I don't know, actually. Like, that's a big argument.
And
Like,
that's
why the fuck
that's
haven't we been
the
back
thing.
to the moon?
What do they know that we don't?
Yeah, it's a little sus, man.
That's true.
It's a little
it
sus.
could,
I mean,
it could literally
what-
just be money. They don't want to spend money on it.
I don't
I
totally disagree
mean,
with
I
that.
guess,
either.
except that they've
But
done
I
it
mean, at
several
that
times.
point, it's like
Yeah.
the Department of Defense would be like, I want in on
There's the
like-
other thing. And as far as the Department of Defense is concerned, nothing costs too much money.
That's
I
true.
mean,
And then
They
on
make
top
up
of that,
most of our budget.
on top of
If
that,
we took away a
um,
percentage, we could have universal health care. in
I
this
don't know
country.
about
I'm
most
sorry.
of our budget. The Pentagon only gets like $800 billion.
we'll stay away from that subject for now, Anthony. But
Yeah,
that's
I
a different
know.
episode in itself. But
That I know.
yeah, but I don't think it's money because we've been up there before and could afford it, and it's only gotten cheaper for us, not more expensive. So
No.
through innovation and technology, it's only gotten cheaper.
The popular
Fuck, we're
opinion
getting
is
to
that
the
we
point
stopped
where we
doing it
might.
because the popular opinion is that we stopped doing it because we beat the Russians in the space race,
So there's just
and
no
then we just stopped
motivation to do
caring
it.
after that. Yeah,
There,
lack of
there might be
motivation.
there might be no motivation for the big wigs. Yeah, actually, that might make sense because
Yeah.
the establishment only wanted to go to the moon when they were getting elected off of the precedent that they were going to beat the Russians.
Yeah, and then they did, and then they kept doing moon missions, and then
And it garnered
people with
less and less
money and
support
people in the
every
government
time.
with money were like, "Why are we still doing this?"
Yeah.
And then that one Apollo 13 happened, and those guys almost died, and that was pretty much it after that.
What happened to the Apollo 13?
They didn't land on the moon because something fucked up in their ship. There was a design flaw,
Mm.
and they almost froze to death.
A couple of
They
them I
made
thought
it,
burned up.
Oh shit.
No, nobody died, but
No, I think you might be
they barely
thinking of
made it
that
to the
space
Earth.
shuttle that blew up.
Yeah,
The
I
one
think I
with
am. Never mind.
teachers on it.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
The one
Apollo
that Big Bird
13.
was almost on. Or was it Elmo?
Something
How,
like
It
could
was
you
like
imagine?
somebody. It was something from Sesame Street.
How would Sesame Street explain that?
God, that'd be fucked.
For some reason, they were going to put Sesame Street, but at last, just before, they decided to put a teacher on there, and then the teacher got blown up instead.
Yeah, I remember
Go
I pissed off one of my peers in high school really bad because on the anniversary of that day, I was really anti anything with authority over me during that point in my life.
Uh-huh.
And so when I heard a bunch of teachers burnt up trying to leave the atmosphere, I just started laughing. And it was the first time I heard about it and I thought it was hilarious. And he got so angry with me because he was like, dude, it was a tragedy. It was one of the worst things that could ever happen. I'm just like, that serves him right for trying to send some fuckers like teachers to the moon. Or to space. Of all people, why would you send them? And I was so cruel and awful with what I said. It just didn't give a
Wow.
shit.
Yike.
Yeah.
Big yike.
I'm still not a big fan of the teaching profession or anything that has authority over other people, honestly. But I don't want them to die either.
The biggest problem with the teaching profession is that they brainwash their kids.
Well, I mean, that's how you teach.
That is how you teach. That's a
Yeah.
big problem. Teachers
The thing
aren't
is,
always going
there
to agree
there
with
is no
parents.
way to have an unbiased way of teaching.
Correct.
Unless you're taught by
Especially
parents, but your
history
parents are
teachers,
biased. It's
government
just the least
teachers.
offensive way to do it.
Economics. I mean,
Well, I mean,
economics
this is only an issue now because everyone used to do homeschooling.
Yeah.
That
But even
used to be
then,
the norm.
parents had their own bias.
Right, and that's the other thing too.
Yeah,
now,
but
really, the heart of the question
That's
is
a less constitutional
nobody wants their
problem if
kid
it's your
being taught a
parents'
separate bias from what they already have.
Yeah, and they actually, while their kid's a minor, you should probably have the right to teach your kid whatever biases you want until they're adults.
Well, obviously
then-
you do.
but
You
then
have
you
the
have
choice
them
of
at that-
education. You have your
they-
choice between private, charter, public, or homeschooling.
Yeah, you do. They just have to be schooled somehow, is the argument, or is the law.
But the issue then is they've been insulated so much to their own ideas. What would make them want to learn a new idea?
I could say the same thing
Yeah,
about
I don't-
schooling now. Whatever political party is in control of the system, currently I'd say it's the left, generally. Not saying it can't be the right, I just think the right's totally dropped the ball in that regard.
I will
It
say
insulates
that
them to that.
I will say that I think the biggest issue with homeschooling is that that's you're most likely to be super sheltered from
Yeah, it socially
reality.
isolates you because it's such a rare instance in society.
And you're probably not going to have any friends unless
Yep.
you have friends in your kids in your neighborhood the same
Yep.
age as you.
Me and Badger had a friend like that.
Yeah.
Graham?
Well, okay. I don't know if he's okay with... Well, okay, just don't say any more of his name and we should be fine. That's a pretty generic name. But, yeah. I don't have to edit that out because there's no context to who he is.
Yeah. I mean, even if you go to a school that's clearly on one side of the political spectrum and they brainwash you, at least you have other kids you can talk to and you can still get different perspectives from them.
Yeah, relatively speaking, my entire time spent in the education system was people trying to force political values on me that neither me or my family agreed with.
Well, and I guess, Ash, how it came out is, you in a way, went through the brainwashing and you still came out not brainwashed in
Yeah,
I
but
guess in a sense.
you gotta
It's like
understand how it's a pretty unconstitutional situation to theoretically steal money from your taxpayers and then use it to do things to them they don't really want done. Like that's like appeal to your more libertarian social values. It's kind of fucked up to
did
do
you
that.
just virtue signal me?
I think you just did.
I didn't virtue signal you. I'm asking you to. I'm
Oh,
trying to appeal to a certain aspect.
Does the
of you.
council agree I was just virtue signaled?
What's the? All right, let's do this.
I don't know.
Let's do this. Where's my internet?
You just tightened me.
By the way, Ashton, your
the
mic is kind of like fucking up a little bit.
Definition. How bad?
Like every once in a while, you just like fade in and out.
That's odd.
Yeah.
Was it ever so bad that like you couldn't hear me at all?
Like it sounded like you were in the distance.
But viewers could still probably hear what I was saying, right?
I don't know.
Probably.
I couldn't understand what you were saying.
Oh, fuck.
There were some issues, yeah.
All right, is it fixed now? Things better?
Yeah, I mean,
Right now,
it
it is,
seems
yeah.
to be doing fine right now.
I'll blame it on lag. Alright, so the definition of virtue signaling: the action of practice of publicly expressing opinions or sentiments intended to demonstrate one's good character, the moral correctness of one's position on a particular issue. So I was not saying that I was inherently correct or that I was inherently of higher virtue than yourself. I was trying to appeal to something I think you agree with me on. That's not virtue signaling. Virtue signaling is what Titan did when he got upset with you for making fun of a meme that he deemed racist. Because he was suggesting he was suggesting he had a higher level of virtue than you. That is what virtue.
He thinks
signaling
Uganda Knuckles is racist.
A lot of people do. If he does, then I know the mainstream does. That's just what he is. He's a mainstream liberal.
You know my opinion on that.
Yeah,
Deal with it.
we're not gonna make that the subject of this.
No.
I mean, let's be honest. If you're on this podcast, you're probably not overly politically correct.
Well, that's because our group as a
We'll
whole
find
is our group as a whole is a speakeasy, isn't it?
I'd say
More or
yeah,
less.
we
Yeah,
pretty much
more or less.
let it flow.
Complete with all the drinking that normally goes along with it, too.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, I don't drink, but
By the way,
I've been there for enough drunk parties.
yeah. By the way, Badger, if I ever get me and you, probably a gun-related episode. If I ever get me and you on an episode where it's just me and you, drinks will be had.
Hell
Definitely.
yes.
Hell yes. That'd be great.
If there's gonna be man, I got my AK in its case on the floor, and I got my freaking AR in
Yeah, but it would
my closet.
it'd be a special episode.
Yeah, but if you don't lubricate your guns with whiskey, we don't want to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, goddamn.
He got me there.
If you can't reliably shoot downrange and hit a bullseye with 3 shots of whiskey in your system,
Or how about that? Or how about that? How about that apple pie, Jacob?
Oh God,
What about it?
it was some of the tastiest.
It's gone the
moonshine
minute
I've
I
ever
open
drank.
it.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Ashton, I got so fucking drunk
I know you did.
at Rye Guy's party.
Okay, let's go back to what we were originally talking about.
Okay, come on. Like you got to think, man. At this point, they've been following us in this conversation. They know where our logic is kind of going. Like people who are listening, understanding. Most of them are going to be our friends anyway.
No, yeah, I get that. Well, for now, the idea is for me to break into
For
another
now.
market. Yeah. And which means I need to be semi-consistent with the subjects. For these kind of conversations, I want to do different episodes that aren't based entirely around a subject, but are more based around our friend group as a whole.
No, I mean that's fair.
So, like, for instance, an episode where it's just me and Badger talking, even if the subject is inherently about guns, that is such an inherent part of his character that, like, it's going to be an episode about him, relatively speaking, and about my
I
relationship
will
with
say,
him.
Badger is the man who finally broke me into getting an AR-15.
Yeah,
It's the superior
love it.
design.
Badger
that's-
is the gun man.
That's one of the merits of your ideology, even though it's so left leaning. You're pro self defense and you're pro gun and you're just not anti. You're not anti means of violence if necessary, which is nice.
I
Because
mean,
so much of the left is so like there's certain pampered people on the left side of the spectrum that are so sheltered that like they don't even consider the concept of self-defense as like a necessity, and I can't tolerate it.
Yeah, that is kind of where the
Oh, you mean like when,
socialist kind
It
of
is.
falls
It is.
short.
You see that in Barron's society the most, not his specific country, but there's that aspect of Europe. It's really
You mean like when Stone Wolf's old coworker was like, "Yeah, if somebody broke into my house, I wouldn't stop them because violence
yeah.
is not good."
No, you
Well,
see that with Hema a little bit
There's
too.
something to be said for, say, somebody breaks into your house. There are ways to get rid of people through scaring them that don't necessarily involve discharging the fire. For example,
Yeah.
a pump action shotgun is great insurance for your home because all you have to do is rack that slide, and everybody knows what that sounds like.
Yeah.
And everybody knows what's coming.
Yeah.
And everybody knows if they
Boy,
stick
you don't
around,
get out
they
of my
gonna find
house
out.
in 5 seconds. I'm about to pump your ass
Well,
full of
think about
lead.
it. You're sneaking around. You made a bump on some. Accidentally you made some noise, and all of a sudden the first thing you hear in the other room is. The first thing going through your mind is, "Oh fuck! Oh shit! Let me get out
Yeah.
as fast as I can. No questions asked."
Yeah, and a lot of that,
Run,
a lot of
run
that
as fast
depends
as
on
you
your
can.
ethics. A lot of that depends
Can't
on your ethics and how
Away
in
from
control
me.
you are,
I'm the
right?
lead slinging man.
So like,
Well, that's the thing.
If
Assuming
somebody-
the burglar doesn't know you're awake,
yeah,
you do have control over the situation.
it depends though of whether or not you have enough control over yourself. Like for instance, if I live alone and somebody breaks into my house, I'm more pro to scare them away. If I live with my kids and my wife upstairs when somebody breaks in, and I've got people to protect, I'm probably going to shoot first and ask questions
The
later.
Book of
because
Boogulation shall be
Yeah.
enacted.
I care significantly more about the danger that could possibly be inflicted to my loved ones than I do about possibly killing somebody who may not deserve it.
And absolutely,
Yeah.
I'm just saying there
My-
are
my-
ways though. If
My
you're
strategy
mindful of the
changes depending on
situation.
who I'm defending. My mindfulness decreases the more is on the line. That's just how it works.
When somebody breaks into your house at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
I would say the more
Oh,
I have
boy,
on the
it's
line, the
3
more
Is that a
careful I
Nerf
get.
gun?
Simply,
I hope so.
No,
the more I have on the
airsoft
line,
gun.
Ashton, I feel like I'm the opposite. The more careful I would get.
It's more
Think about it.
manlier than a Nerf gun.
Think about how scared to death you are when your kids and wife are on the line. Now, I don't know what sort of weapon you'd have for home defense in your house, but I would hope
Not
to
a
God
Mosin.
you're not packing anything with more penetration power than a hollow point 9mm.
Yeah, it
Because
depends.
if you are packing, 5.56 or anything like that, you run the risk of
Shooting
totally
through the walls or the
shooting your
floor.
neighbor's kids in the head through their
Yeah,
wall.
yeah, I agree.
And that's not okay, obviously.
Some of
It's
you
not.
may die, but that is a risk I am willing to take.
Damn it, Joe.
for when I need to shoot the burglar across the street behind my neighbor's fridge.
That's why you have a deagle,
That's
friend.
why you have a deagle. Yes.
Anyway,
Anyway,
Edenism.
let's get back to Edenism. So ultimately, the conclusion that we can draw from this the most is obviously that the thing I say all the time: one man's utopia is another man's dystopia, no matter what. And quite possibly one of the worst things that can happen to human beings as a species is for us to have nothing to worry about. Does anybody
Yeah,
disagree with that?
Yeah.
I
Not that we shouldn't keep trying to improve things. We should, right?
yeah.
But the
I mean-
the resolution that Edenism theorizes is a dystopia because things are too easy.
I mean, and also, let's be honest. If somehow we were to have gotten to that point, statistically speaking, we would have probably uploaded our consciousness or something before that.
Cyber war. Yay!
Cyber war. Or nukes.
Cyberpunk.
Nukes aren't literal nukes. It's just destroying whatever servers people's consciousnesses are uploaded to in the real world. Yeah.
Well, that's yeah.
You
I mean,
hire
that's the
you hire
logical
a
extent.
monkey.
The first thing that
Yeah,
came to my
that's the only
mind
way
was
to kill
imagine
people.
doing virtual wars so you wouldn't have to actually do it IRL. But then you think about sore losers and they'll just attack your server and
Yeah,
wipe
they just hire a hitman to walk into your server room and kick in your server, just spill coke on it or something. You fucking die. That's how you die.
About to fucking
How-
juice the
how
server
did
with
you
a
die?
nice cold glass of Coca-Cola.
on my
Yeah.
goddamn computer.
I mean, yeah, I guess that is a big argument. Edenism may not be a physical thing where we all have our own stuff. We all might just have our own server that we're god of someday. The singularity, right?
Basically, the idea of when VR gets too good and you never want to leave
You
it.
prefer it. than to reality. So yeah, all you need
Yeah.
is the ability to upload your consciousness, and then a higher level of software that we prefer to real life, and you're done.
I mean, at that point, yeah, humanity's just
At that point, we're done. I don't care what
Basically.
anyone says.
I'll touch on this tangent real quick about uploading your consciousness. There is some theoretical stuff about uploading your consciousness, which is really interesting and more possible. And I guess it would be what the human soul is. Because, like, if you take the religious concept of a soul and then what your consciousness is now, like what makes your consciousness yours and not anybody else's and separate, right? That would be your soul, per se, wouldn't it? Relatively speaking. That unphysical... That metaphysical
The
thing.
awareness of your existence.
Yeah, and your own personal quirks and thought processes and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Somebody theorized that if we could capture the brain activity of somebody, like capture the consciousness of them, you could theoretically replicate people if you could upload that while the other person is still alive.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah. But that's the closest way we can think about uploading consciousness now, is taking a picture of somebody in a current state of mind and uploading that to, like, a computer. That's explored in the Old Man's War book series I'm having you read, Anthony.
Yeah.
In one of the third later books, the main character is actually like this evil, the main antagonist, but in one of the CDF bodies. And he starts a fresh slate, even though he has the mind of the antagonist that he's supposed to hunt down.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, so what we deemed is Edenism, no matter how great it sounds, is awful because it's too great, and human nature fucks it up.
Unless for somehow over the millions of years, the time that it would take to get there, humans evolve and would be able to somehow live in it.
Are happy with complacency.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is a possible conclusion to communism and capitalism. We just genetically and physically alter ourselves to survive in that type of utopia, and then it isn't anybody's dystopia.
Possibly.
For
Who
communism,
knows?
make people more like ants, so they care more about the collective than themselves, and for capitalism, make everybody so egocentric and competitive that nobody can fail. Or they die trying.
Some of you may die, but it is a sacrifice.
Somebody has to fail, though, right?
What's up?
Somebody has to fail, though, right? If
in
everybody's super
capitalism?
competitive.
It depends. If you get to a certain level of automation, people can fail in their entrepreneurial goals, but they wouldn't fail in, like, survival because they're provided for by automatons. So yeah. Any last any last rebuttals from anybody? I think that might be it.
I think we've got it. I think we're up.
All right, sweet. I'll get this edited and posted tonight, and shit'll be great. Goodbye, everybody.
Good. I'm gonna go eat pizza.
Bye.
I'm gonna go eat pizza. I'm sorry, I don't know why that would be
I'm
wrong.
gonna go raise my insulin shit.
Hell yeah.
I mean, my blood sugar is low right now.